Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Conversation with Dr. Adele Merritt, IC, CIO, ODNI. Now, please welcome INSA Vice President of Policy, Bishop Garrison.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our program. Today, we're excited to host one of our community's top leaders. Now, before we begin, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you have questions, and we hope that you do, please submit them through the questions box. I'll do my best to get to them, and we know this is going to be a very dynamic and engaging conversation. We are pleased to welcome members of the press to this call this morning. Please note that this program is on the record and being recorded. Lastly, a big thanks to our sponsor, Salesforce, for their support of this three-part series focused on emerging technology and the innovation ecosystem, as well as cloud computing. We could not bring this level of thought leadership to you without their support. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Bill Pessin, Senior Vice President, U.S. National Security, Defense, and Aerospace at Salesforce, who will introduce our speaker. Over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Bishop, and thank you, INSA, for hosting this morning's discussion. At Salesforce National Security, a wholly owned subsidiary of Salesforce dedicated to our national security customers, we empower our U.S. intelligence community and defense customers to meet their mission requirements through cutting-edge commercial cloud, platform as a service, and software as a service enterprise solutions designed to meet the unique requirements of national security. Our solutions provide secure, compliant, agile, and innovative technology that supports the critical work of intelligence and defense professionals, ensuring they have the tools they need to complete their agency missions. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Adele Merritt, is the intelligence community's Chief Information Officer. In this capacity, she is responsible for leading the community's ongoing modernization efforts to ensure the security of IT systems and enhancing IT cooperation with the intelligence community. Dr. Merritt has over 20 years of demonstrated technical, analytic, and policy expertise in support of cyber and national security operations. Her previous leadership roles include serving as the Principal Deputy Chief Information Officer for Cyber at the Department of Energy and Director and Acting Senior Director for Intelligence Programs on the NSC staff during the Obama administration. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Adele Merritt.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to be here this morning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Merritt. We can only imagine how busy you are, so it really means the world to us and to our community for you to take time out and join us once again for this conversation. Now, I say once again because we know that you spoke with us back in December of 2023. You were appointed to this position of CIO of ODNI and of the IC in early 2022. So just to kick things off, can you start by sharing what you drew on for this role and how your time in office has been informed by your past experience, both specifically in cyber and in national security more broadly?
Thank you very much. If I could just start with what drew me to this position. So as the intelligence community CIO, I get to work with the 18 elements, the 18 different parts of the intelligence community. And so for me, what drew me was the opportunity to work with amazing CIOs and for amazing leaders. If you look at the leadership of the intelligence community right now, we have some brilliant people who are wonderful human beings. And so being able to be part of that team was just too good of an opportunity to pass up. I also really was drawn by the mission. If you look at the jobs that are out there for the intelligence community, and many of them are listed on usajobs.gov, you can see all the cool things that we do. If you've never looked at those, I encourage you to go out and look because there are some really cool things written in those job descriptions that you can only do in government. And they're not just entry-level jobs anymore. I got my job through applying on usajobs.gov. So some of the senior-most positions are also out there, mid-career, entry-level, and senior level. And so how am I drawing on the experiences of my past into this role? I started as a research mathematician. And so one of the first things that I learned to do was to pull the amazing ideas that are coming a few years from now and tie those to the mission. How do we use technology to advance the important work that we are doing within the intelligence community to protect our nation's security? I also draw on my time, Bishop, from industry. And so I did 5 years outside the government before coming back to ODNI. And so while I haven't mastered all the business skills, I do have an appreciation of what the business cycle is like, right? Doing business development, closing a contract, delivering services for the government. It's a great experience to have. And I bring that to the table when I'm working with our industry partners. And then the last part of what I bring is just that passion of working with the next generation. And so making sure that we are providing the knowledge, skills, ability, and experience to those who are going to take over. Because Bishop, at the end of the day, I'd like to retire and know the nation is in good hands. We all have that goal, right? And so making sure that I am drawing on my time working with academic institutions and the students who are out there interested in joining our profession.
Well, you've hit, and thank you so much for that opening, Dr. Merritt. You hit on so many amazing topics right now, particularly just to kind of echo the idea that that experience in the private sector, being able to understand how to meet the private sector needs and government's needs in a collaborative space and bringing back to that to government, being a boomerang, so to speak, is absolutely amazing. And we really applaud you for that. And thank you for your continued service to the nation and to the IC. One piece you also mentioned was the mission of the organization and of the intelligence community. And to make sure I'm going to read this verbatim, make sure I get this one right. The title, in May, ODNI released the vision for the IC information environment, information technology roadmap as a part of your ongoing efforts. And that document is a kind of a guide for the IC's decision-making around cloud environment, around cybersecurity, data, artificial intelligence, other many forms of IT technologies, or of IT, I should say, excuse me. So it was endorsed by all 18 members of the IC. And can you just tell us about the process in developing that type of report, like how it came together and why it felt like the right moment to actually put something out into the world like that?
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the roadmap. I'm really proud of the work that we did with the elements to get this endorsed by all 18 of them unanimously. We did this in a very collaborative way because we recognized that we couldn't write a roadmap and kind of dictate to everybody where they needed to go. We needed to be informed by their missions, by the technology that they think they need for their future needs. And so we started off actually by beginning with an industry-informed look at the landscape, because as much as we like to think the intelligence community is special and different, we are very much like all the other organizations out there. We have our own quirks, our own unique aspects, but there are other people who are struggling with the same challenges we are. And so we used an industry partner to do a survey of where industry feels that they are going in the future. We looked at 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year out. And when we were developing the scope for the roadmap, we didn't want it to be science fiction, right? 10 years out, at some point when you start to write that down on paper, it feels a little like science fiction. We also didn't want to make it 2 years because that was too close. We needed this to be a strategic planning document. And so we settled on a 5-year time frame informed by where industry is going. And we had almost 1,000 different technology points that they were looking at as critical to the future. We then downscoped and we decided that we could really only handle 5 focus areas, maybe with 5 sub areas to it. And when you see the final document, it has 5 focused areas with a collection of 19 key initiatives. We realized if we were fighting off more than that, we might not have a chance of achieving them. And so we worked with, in addition to the CIO community, we worked with the CISOs, the architects, the chief data officers, right? Because when you start to look a couple of years out, it is critically dependent on having the right data to do all the amazing capabilities with AI. So we brought in our chief data officers, we brought in the S&T elements, and also our privacy, civil liberties, and transparencies officers. So in a way, when you hear people talk about a digital C-suite, which is the CIO, the CISOs, and the CDOs, we started with that, but we ended up with a digital village of all the people who were critically important to sharing the vision of where we need to go in 5 years. I also want to highlight, you read it. It was on the internet. That was done by design, informed by my time in industry, right? We need to be talking with our partners at an unclassified level, letting them know where we're going. So there's not a classified compendium of this. This was not written on the high side and then downgraded for the low side. We designed this from the beginning to be available and accessible to the public. And so I'm really proud when you look through the document, there's a lot of words on those pages. We worked really hard to have mission vignettes, to have timelines and milestones, and to have details behind where we're going so that others can join us on the journey. And so you asked, why now?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot happening right now, Bishop, right? If we had our cyber bingo cards that we were playing with right now, zero trust, artificial intelligence, quantum, there's a lot happening in the cyber landscape. There's a lot happening in the technology landscape. We wanted to make sure that we were leveraging this opportunity to its fullest, that we weren't just letting this happen to us. We were driving where we wanted to go. And so having the roadmap as a way to discuss with our leadership, discuss with those who approve our budgets, it helps us speak with one voice. It also helps us establish the milestones, because what we need to do today will inform the future. We all know technology doesn't roll out overnight, right? Sometimes it's a multi-year journey. And so we have to start now. And so it was very time urgent for us to get this done.
Yeah, and thank you so much, man. I cannot applaud the idea of the digital village enough when you talk about that digital C-suite that really helps to drive and have an impact on the implementation of these types of roadmaps. I can only imagine how critical it is for you to have the right team, the right resources together in order to make that happen. One follow-on question for this too is, what about this, the findings or the lessons learned really surprised you as you were preparing the report?
So I was pleasantly surprised that we were on the right path, right? When you start to do a look at where industry is going, where partners are going, you do open yourself up to a little bit of risk, because you might discover that the decisions you had made in the past or your predecessors had made weren't the right ones. And that leaves you a little vulnerable. And so I was really pleasantly surprised to see that we had gotten, for the most part, all of our decisions right. When you look at the investment and the time and energy we have put into pursuing a multiple cloud environment, we did that at the right time, so that we are now poised to realize the power of AI, right? Some of the cybersecurity activities that we had done were the right decisions. And so it was nice being able to come out of that and say, phew, we're on the right path. We have to do some things faster. We have to accelerate some things. We have to change the order of some things. Not everything was perfect, but we didn't fundamentally get it wrong, which was reassuring.
That's fantastic. And the amount of effort and work that goes into those types of reports, at least from my own experiences, I can only imagine how great that feels when you have a hypothesis like that and you go down the road, you say, oh, we are on the right path. Let's continue to do this type of work, and let's continue to be mission focused as a team. So I definitely applaud you for that. So following on a piece that you kind of hit on a little bit, the cloud-based solutions and for data needs. The roadmap highlights the importance of the evolving single cloud provider as an environment with multiple cloud providers and services. What are the next steps? I know that a lot of our industry, individuals from industry that are watching right now really have a lot of questions about this, but what are the next steps in optimizing the cloud environment to ensure operational success?
One of the things we need to do is we need to embrace working in a cloud native environment, right? We cannot continue to try to take what we have on-prem or in a different environment and force it into the cloud without understanding all the power that the cloud brings to us. And so for some of us, that means refactoring some of the tools, rethinking the way we're doing things. It is important that we leverage the power that the cloud natively brings to us. And so there are capabilities in the cloud that come along. You know, when you have one of these cloud offerings, each of the cloud service providers has strengths. They might be different from each other, which is fine because the IC has 18 elements and we have different mission requirements. And so learning the different strengths and weaknesses, the different strengths of the cloud, understanding how they will align with our mission needs is critically important. It's not a matter of requiring them all to be the same so that we end up the lowest common denominator, if you will. It's also critically important for us to be advancing our cybersecurity capabilities. And so as we move to the cloud, as we move to any technology, change introduces risk as much as it introduces opportunity to do things in stronger, more resilient ways. And so for us, one of the questions that I get is, why aren't you going faster? I'm like, it takes time, right? We have to have the workforce that understands this. We have to have the confidence in the capability, and we have to have the security protections around it. And then, we move forward with all the speed that we need to transition to the cloud. I also am, when I'm starting to think about the cybersecurity requirements of working in cloud, I'm also really excited about some of the automation that this will bring to the processes, whether it's developing on the low side and then being able to, bring software in securely, working in secure development environments, having automation for our cybersecurity tools, right? A lot of things still happen at the speed of people, despite the fact that machines work at machine speeds. And so when you're doing cybersecurity, looking at how much can be automated, how much can be assisted to the analysts. Also, supply chain risk management, same thing. How do we bring automation and some of these amazing tools that are out there into our environment to help us accelerate faster?
Fantastic. And you bring up a fantastic point, moving at the speed of people and understanding resources. But and then on the other side, the technical portions of it and the technical gaps. And in your opinion, what are some of the most pressing technical and resourcing gaps facing U.S. national security and the intelligence communities, particularly as we talk about the roadmap? What initiatives does the roadmap propose in order to close some of these gaps?
Let me talk about some of the gaps and some of the things that we're trying to do to close those gaps that kind of as we go through, because I have a long list, right? Anytime I want to talk about challenges, I have a list of challenges. One of the most pressing things on my mind right now is, how do we integrate AI? And for me, everybody's focused on the AI capabilities, and I need to also be articulating the digital foundation that goes into the underpinnings of those AI capabilities. So the storage, compute, and transport of data, which, a lot will depend upon the cloud, the infrastructure underneath it, making sure that we have the bandwidth, that we have the resiliency, so we can do all that. And then when you think about where we will be using the AI or any of these amazing technologies, I am keenly focused on the tactical edge. It cannot be all at headquarters. It cannot all be here in the Washington, D.C. area. We need to recognize that the intelligence community does have organizational headquarters throughout the country. We do have people working throughout the world. And so we need to be able to provide them the tools that they need, the access to the data that they need, no matter where they are in the world. And so CIOs talk about anytime, anywhere, under all conditions, for everyone. And so making sure that we are being able to provide to those who are the most forward, who might be operating in, areas where they don't have the strongest bandwidth connection back to mission. So tactical edge is something that is top of mind. I'm also very much focused, Bishop, on how do we do this in a secure way. We've talked about cybersecurity, and we can almost have a whole hour on cybersecurity, so we can go back to that, if you will. I do want to acknowledge the resource constraints, right? So as we're looking at this, oftentimes people talk about the money aspect of it, right? Yes. As good stewards of taxpayer funds. We're trying to do this in a fiscally sound way. We don't have the money tree behind us growing. And so how are we making trade-offs? How are we making decisions? But it's also resource constraints on people. And so, the workforce, making sure that we have them allocated to the highest priorities, that we're working with our partners to help advance as a group. And so when we look at some of our most pressing gaps and things that we can do together, how do we build those partnerships, whether they're with allied nations, within government organizations, with industry? And I do often look to our industry partners to help me sometimes bridge stronger with our government partners, right? Because industry is talking to a lot of people. Sometimes I'm not aware of what might be happening in another branch of the government, another department or agency, and they can help build that connection. Also working with academia so that they know the skills that we need for the workforce that we're hoping to hire in the future. So there's so many aspects that we can dive onto the pressing gaps of what we need to do together. And we tried to outline some of those in the roadmap so we could signal to folks where our attention is being paid.
No, and that's fantastic. And particularly as you're talking about the workforce piece, I think that is incredibly germane and salient to the entirety of the discussion. There's so many different technical issues and gaps that you've identified that the entirety of the IC and the cybersecurity community are attempting to work and engage together on. And one thing the National Cyber Director, Henry Coker, did was announce earlier this year that he is working with OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, to remove the requirement for 4-year degrees for some federal cybersecurity contracting jobs. And that seems immensely important to a lot of the issues that you've kind of put forward. So what are your thoughts on this plan, and how could it help to diversify the workforce and build a stronger cybersecurity workforce within the ranks?
I applaud his plan to, take some of the degree requirements away for, some of the positions that we need to help support the government. When I got into my job at ODNI, one of the first things I did when I was looking at our vacancy announcements was try to remove the degree requirement. So many of the jobs that are posted to come work with the OIC CIO do not have a degree requirement. Part of that was informed by my experience working with the military. And so you have people who have amazing cyber skills. They have learned on the job through their military experience. They might have enlisted when they were 18 and they did not have a college degree. They have amazing cyber skills. They are some of the most, strongest network defenders. And so how would we look if we were discouraging them because they didn't have a 4-year degree from continuing their interest in serving the nation? And so that was my first driver on removing them. My second was also experienced as a mom. And so I had 2 high school students who graduated at the start of the pandemic. They were supposed to graduate in 2020. And so I watched that generation firsthand deal with their world being upended, and some of their plans to go to college didn't work the way they had anticipated. They went to a 2-year school, they went to a training program instead, a boot camp, and got a certificate, or they went straight into the workforce. There is a lot of talent out there that doesn't follow a traditional 4-year plan. And so it felt, as a mom, I was very discouraged when I realized that some of my hiring practices might be discouraging, might be preventing from some of these students who had hands-on experience and could do the job. They just didn't have a box checked with the degree. And so that made me look inward and say, is this really a requirement? And so the last aspect of this is when I looked in the mirror, when I was looking inwardly, I realized I didn't have a computer science degree. I didn't have a cybersecurity degree. I have a PhD in math. I started.
Which is no small thing, let's be.
But it wasn't a thing when I was in college. We didn't have cybersecurity classes. We barely had computer science classes. And so I have learned everything on the job from amazing mentors, from amazing opportunities. And so we do provide those opportunities, and we have to account for that in our hiring practices. And so looking for who has the skills, the experience, to me just made sense. And so I'm excited to hear what Director Coker is doing in this space. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how it will play out and how that will bring more people to the table. And so you did talk a little bit about diversity of experience. And I know, Bishop, you and I have different types of degrees, and we both bring amazing perspective to the conversation.
Yes.
When you're looking at cyber or IT, being able to bring the different perspectives is critically important. We will not solve the problems we're trying to solve if we continue to have the same narrow view at the table. And so how do we bring in other discipline, other skill fields, and recognize that people all bring different parts of it? At the end of the day, we're bringing IT and we're bringing all of these amazing capabilities to do something. So having part of that mission user base as part of our workforce in the IT field, I think that's amazing opportunities for advance faster.
Absolutely. And this next question, as you've made so many great points on your thoughts and on Director Coker's thoughts regarding kind of the future of the workforce as it relates to cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is still a growing and very critical field. And as we see these new technologies, emerging technologies like AI and others that are changing the threat landscape, we know how important it is for the U.S. government to attract that new type of cyber skill talent and those professionals, so we can ensure that our overall workforce is current and aware of the changes that are happening across the industry. So how can the U.S. government, particularly the IC, make it easier for workers to gain the experiences and skill sets necessary to help support this mission and get the advantage over adversaries?
When I look at my background and my experience, one of the most powerful learning tools I had was working in different places. And so having managers encourage employees to do diversity tours, to do joint duty rotations. I know, the Fed Civ side is looking at cyber tours where the cyber workforce can work in a different department or agency, similar to the IC's joint duty experience. Having that opportunity to see the service that you are delivering in a mission landscape or having mission users come in and learn the IT part, that is very powerful. It also, so when you hear it on the surface, you're like, that sounds great. Why don't we do that? It's really hard to give up a resource for a year. When you have a great teammate who's doing wonderful in their job, giving them up for a year so that they can work in a partner organization. You have to think long term. You have to think for the benefit over the long game, not just they're not going to be here in 6 months the next time this cycle happens and oh my goodness, who's going to be doing this instead of them? I'm going to have to train a new person. So kind of giving up some of your best talent so that they can experience from a different position at the table. It is also one of the benefits that we learned from the experience of teleworking right at the start of the pandemic is there's a lot of amazing tools out there on the unclassified side. And so there's training that exists today that could be leveraged to learn some of these new capabilities, right? Conversations like we're having right now, being able to go to industry events to see what's happening, being able to go to training events to learn hands-on, being able to step out of the day-to-day press of business and explore and tinker and use some of the capabilities that are out there in the learning environment, I think is going to help us pick up some of these tools in a really fast way.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and to definitely a point I would love to make sure we mention is that groups like us, like INSA, trade associations, and other groups, but particularly INSA, we're looking for opportunities to help support that skill building and help provide future trainings, particularly around emerging technologies like AI for government and for industry to come in and hear what some of the best practices are and what's happening with some of these new technologies to help government officials close that gap, because we know how important it is for you folks to hear about the up and coming trends. As you mentioned that you don't have, if we had 100 hours in a day, we'd be able to easily follow everything that's happening at any given time, but we have to prioritize, and it's up to groups like ours to help kind of close that gap. And we're looking for opportunities to make our part known in that in the coming weeks and months. So we're going to go ahead, if it's okay with you, and start taking in some of these questions. And folks, thank you so much for some of these amazing questions that you've been submitting. We're going to do what we can in our last 10 to 15 minutes here to try to gain a lot of input from them and see if we can engage on them. But the first one comes from gentleman John Green, and it goes back to the technical gaps issue that we were discussing a little bit earlier, when we said, I asked about your opinions on the most pressing most pressing technical and resource gaps facing the IC and national security. The question is, how can the private sector help support efforts to reduce these gaps, to reduce these barriers to success?
So private sector, oftentimes when people hear this question, they think of capabilities the private sector can sell to us. And when I hear this question, I actually think of the industry mission partners who are sitting next to me day in, day out, who are working in the SCIFs with us, who are working side by side around the world. And so making sure that you are sharing with us some of the ways that this is being done faster, better, stronger by other organizations, right? You have the best practices, because oftentimes we are being challenged with a problem for the first time, but this is your core business and you've helped people overcome this business 100 times already. And so pointing out to us what can be done, what the options are, making sure that we can talk with other government organizations that might be similar to us who have overcome this, so we can maybe see past some of the challenges that we might, sometimes we have biases. We have some preconceived notions about what things will work inside our networks and won't. And so being able to politely jostle us into seeing things in different ways is really helpful for those who are, part of the organization. For those who have an amazing capability that they feel can solve a mission need, especially as we've written the roadmap. And I know other organizations in the past and in the future have tried to do unclassified challenge problems to give an idea, removing the mission sensitive part of it and reducing it to that technical capability that we're trying to solve. Looking for those opportunities and demonstrating, whether it's through a rapid prototyping event, through an activity where demonstration of capability is available and there's government people there, those are very powerful. I know when I was in industry, we were supporting several of those, and it was really neat to see some of the organizations who might not have people with clearances, who might be further away from the Washington, D.C. region, come and have a capability that really sparks interest and can solve a mission need. And so breaking down those barriers as that hinder sometimes our conversations between each other.
Absolutely. No, and definitely it can sometimes have a silo effect within organizations that don't help either. So going back a little bit to the workforce piece, INSA has an incredible group of very talented interns who are here right now online and who are watching. I know we have probably a few more students involved in this. So how a question comes from Marie Tisdale: how do we keep knowledgeable students on our staffs? When you talk about bringing in these types of students, and you want to keep them engaged and keep them interested, not only in the work, but engaging through the processes, whether it's going through the clearance process or whether it's just going through the overall hiring process. How do we keep those students on staff?
Mentoring and mission, right? So while they're here, giving them a taste of the mission, right? Not just giving them all the prep work, bringing them into the room where the exciting conversations are happening so they can see the direct impact that their career could have if they're coming this way. Mentorship, and it doesn't end when the internship ends, right? That continued communication. Within ODNI, we support the IC Centers of Academic Excellence. And so we have summer interns who come to us occasionally. We have them come 2-3 summers in a row. And so since I've arrived, there are 3 interns in particular that I remember from my first summer here. Every summer they come back and they visit me, and we spend a half an hour, and I, learn what classes they've taken, how they're thinking about their future career. But I also reach out to them during the school year. I'll drop them a note during the spring semester and the fall semester and just check in on them and make sure everything's going well. And so that's one of the things we sometimes forget within the intelligence community, because we're working on the other network. We forget that human connection to the interns. If we really want them to come, we have to keep talking to them.
Absolutely. And I know my interns probably get sick of me talking to them throughout the day, but I think you're right. It really is about looking for opportunities to engage them and kind of lifting them up and giving them opportunities to lead and really help not only feel a part, but truly be a part of the overall operation as much as possible. So, so thank you for that. And thank you for your leadership on that. Another question for Summer from Summer Bailey. What priorities are you looking for the upcoming fiscal year for FY25? We've talked a lot about the roadmap, and we've talked about where we're coming from and what has been identified, but what are some of your ongoing priorities?
Great question. I think about my priorities in 4 buckets. The first one is architecting for the future. This is making sure that we have the infrastructure needed to support all the mission requirements that we have. And, I think I might have mentioned it before, enterprise architecture, the enterprise IT, people sometimes forget about it. They take it for granted. It's like the electricity. You walk into the room, you flip the switch, you expect it to be there. When it's not there, everybody's really concerned. And so not just magic, right? Electricity doesn't just flow. There's a whole industry designed to make that reliable so we never have a blip. And so making sure that we are spending attention to everything that happens under the hood is critically important to me. The second aspect is, improving cybersecurity. All of this technology needs to be secure because the adversary does not stop its interest in us. And so we have specific areas that we're looking to strengthen our cybersecurity activities. The third area for me is mission partners, making sure that we continue to grow and sustain our partnerships with, allied nations, industry partners, academia, all the people that we depend upon, because good partnership is not just when you pick up the phone when you need somebody, right? Good partnership is day-to-day engagement, sharing best practices, building programs together. And that takes time, and you have to dedicate to it, or you take it for granted and it's not there when you need it. And then the last aspect for me is making sure that we have empowered the workforce. Because at the end of the day, it'll just be a collection of very expensive tools if we don't have the people who will make all of this amazing technology sing and help protect our nation and allies.
Absolutely true. And on that point, I think we have a good follow-on. And folks, we have time for about 2 more questions, I think, at most. So I'm going to do my best to try to get to a couple of these quickly. But Jason Logan asked, and this is going back, it appears, to the roadmap, some of the early comments on the roadmap. Why is it important for the IC to invest in its digital foundation to support mission users? And what changes are potentially needed in the coming years, not only just this FY, but in future fiscal years?
It's critically important that we continue to invest in our digital foundation, because without it, everything built upon it is unstable. And so it's kind of like a Jenga game, right? If you keep pulling from the foundation and putting on the top and saying, oh, we need AI, we need this, we need that, and pulling resources from the foundation, the whole thing will collapse. And that's actually an option for the nation to have that happen. And so I need to continue to make sure that we have the, fine-grained access that we need to do zero trust. That will then also help us when the data is, properly tagged and we're looking at who has the ability to see that data to do that mission element. There's dual use for so much of this, and making sure that we don't get caught up in the hype, of the part that's only seen at the top, the applications, the software, that we forget about, all the foundational aspects that make us interoperable, that make us resilient. And so part of what I feel a deep responsibility to is to keep a persistent look on, the core day-to-day infrastructure that's needed.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, for all of these thoughtful answers, and just incredible amount of information for the audience to really take back and think on. So our last question, it comes from Janice Murphy. What degrees, and this goes back kind of to a lot of the workforce pieces that we've discussed thus far, but and I'll expand it maybe a little bit, but she asked, what degrees would you recommend, professional or graduate, what have you, for working in the IC, in the information environment, tech, et cetera? And previously, as you've already kind of mentioned, you can have a multitude of backgrounds that are working in this space and in this environment. And as we were going through our educations, we didn't have necessarily access to those types of degrees too. So what are you looking for then, at least in degrees and or skill sets from individuals that are looking to break into this type of work?
One of the most critical skill sets that people bring is being inquisitive and liking to, enjoy tinkering with things, because most of the time, the first solution that I think of doesn't work. And so I need to be creative and agile and tinker around to see what will work in the end. When I'm looking at degrees, and I know we've had the conversation about, lessening the requirement on degrees, so I'm not changing my position on that. But if you are in school and you're wondering, will your degree be helpful within the intelligence community? No matter what degree you have, no matter what interest you have, my answer will be the same. Yes, we need you. We have a role for that, because there's so many amazing things here that I can't talk about that we do, that your degree will be relevant and appreciated. In the IT world, computer science, computer engineering, software development, all the traditional STEM roles are needed, and also business students, making, because when you think about all this IT that we've talked about, Bishop, right, we have to procure it.
Yep.
And so we need the business majors, the MBAs, the people who know project management. That is so critically important, because all of these projects have so many moving parts. If you have the organizational skills, the mindset, the business acumen to help bring these programs to life, that is so critically important right now.
Incredible. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And with that, I think we're right up against time. Do you have any closing thoughts, Dr. Merritt, that you would like to share with the audience? Like, what would be the one takeaway you want them to think about on today's conversation?
The IC is moving out. We have a vision. We have a plan, right? The adversary is not sitting still, and neither are we. And so this is a really exciting time. If you have an interest in helping us as, a vendor partner, as, a student intern, as somebody who wants to work here for a couple of years, please, the water is warm. Come on in. You can come and serve in many different opportunities here, and I highly encourage you to think about it. Bishop, thank you for the opportunity to talk about some of the things that are top of mind for me. I really enjoyed the experience.
Thank you again so much for joining us, and thank you truly for your service, Dr. Merritt. We truly appreciate it. And to the audience, thank all of you for joining us this morning and for sharing within these insights. This was an incredibly informative discussion. Thank you to Salesforce for sponsoring this program. Again, we couldn't do it without you. And for everyone watching online, thank you. You're going to see a short pop-up for a short survey whenever the webinar ends. Please take a moment to complete this and let us know how we did. It really informs our processes moving forward. Looking ahead, next week, we will hold the 11th Intelligence and National Security Summit. We're very excited in partnership with FCA International. We're expecting a record-breaking over 2,000 attendees for August 27th and 28th programming at the Bethesda North Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. We have an incredible lineup of speakers, plus we will host an opening day career fair, the first time we're doing this, with a free headshot studio, resume reviews, and plenty of time to connect with top employers from the public and private sector. So please consider joining us for that. When we kick off September, we will have 2 new virtual events. The Insights from CIA on Cloud and Data, a special edition of Coffee and Conversation that will be taking place on September 4th, Wednesday at 9 a.m. We will hear from Larry Taxon, the chief of CloudWorks at the CIA, and his colleague Chris Bidnight, the agency's technical director in the data office, and that will be moderated again by me. This is the second installment of our series with Salesforce. Again, thank you to Salesforce, and it will be focused on emerging technology and innovation. And then on September 5th, we will hold the first of a 2-part series from the INSA Foundation on the future of the IC workforce, technical and talent transformation. For the first installment, we will have Joellen Atkins, the Deputy Director of Human Development of the Human Director of Development at NGA. And we'll also have Ms. Lindsay Kaiser, who's with Clearance Jobs, is going to moderate, as well as Lauren Bean-Buda, who is the founder and CEO of Girl Security. This is going to be a discussion around diversifying the talent pipeline, innovative recruitment and retention initiatives, skill-based hiring, work outside of the DMV, and so much more. And then later that month, we have no shortage of events. We're going to be holding a SCIF after hours with Trey Treadwell, the NGA Associate Director of Capabilities. This is going to be September 25th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Classified event will focus on acquisition flexibilities, Project Luno, and so much more. To learn about this and other programming and all our programming taking place, please go online to insaonline.org. This concludes today's programming. Thank you for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your day.